Hey, welcome into Friday morning here at AM Baton Rouge. It is time once again for the segment we like to call DC Current, a look at goings-on in Washington, D.C., and it's brought to you by our friends at the LABI, champions of free market states since 1975. Joining us right now for DC Current is Senator Bill Cassidy, who's with us. Senator, good morning. Long time no talk. How you been?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Pretty well.
We are well. We got wind of a plan you are proposing and thought it would be good to speak with you about it. We do bust a lot of people that are carrying drug money and drugs from the Mexican cartels, and you would like to do what with that money?
We should use that money to secure our southern border. If it is people running drugs across that border that's creating so many problems in our nation, let's take that money which we confiscate from them and use it to make it harder for them to do their business.
I do not disagree with you in principle. Do we have a legal mechanism to do that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. First, the cartels move about $110 billion, with a B, billion dollars a year from the United States to Mexico. So we confiscate about $7 billion of it. We should do a lot better than that. We should do a whole lot better than that. That said, if we confiscate currently $7 billion, bond it out. That's what we do in Louisiana. Unclaimed property, I think it is. We bond out and complete road projects.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take, every year we're going to get $7 billion. Let's just bond out $3 billion of it. And every year that $3 billion will be put towards securing our border.
Well, that would be a way to go for sure. So does this take quite literally an act of Congress, or do we just need to administratively change the forfeiture rules as it regards this particular area?
That money currently is going, at least a portion of it, going to Homeland Security. So now you'd have to, on the one hand, if Homeland Security is using it to fill in a hole in their budget, you'd have to come back on the backside. On the other hand, Homeland Security, I believe, could, and we're checking this out, could just designate that to go towards construction. And then, obviously, in another process, you'd fill the hole that created. But it's a way to get at building the wall without having to deal with Democrats, Washington, D.C. Democrats, saying, no, if Trump's for it, we're against it. That settles it. End of story.
What's the estimated cost of the wall in billions?
Currently, the president's seeking about $25 billion over 10 years to do it. And when we say a wall, the president has backed off on a physical wall. He wants to secure the border. There's ways in Afghanistan, for example, that we use drones, hot air balloons, infrared to secure the border. And in some places, it's a physical wall. But in other places, it's something different. So we would deploy that, again, over 10 years to build it out, make it harder for drug dealers to bring their drugs across the border.
Well, it seems like something that could be done quite easily. I would assume you'd also be talking about having some sort of an ongoing presence monitoring on the ground as well, whether beefing up Border Patrol or having special contingencies of federal officers that rotate through, something like that?
So there is already an effort to increase the number of Border Patrol, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And everything I just spoke of in terms of having hot air balloons which monitor as well as drones, clearly there's people on the backside that not only will kind of monitor, but then go out and intervene when they see folks moving across the border. So more personnel, absolutely a part of it. But what we're really trying to do is take people sneaking fentanyl across an open desert and force them to go through a checkpoint. If you go through a checkpoint at Laredo or McAllen, then you have more of a chance to catch the contraband. And then also we want to increase the mechanism by which we catch that contraband.
I think your drug dog just caught somebody, Senator.
Yeah, my dog.
That sounds like a big dog.
He is a big dog, and he's a great dog, but on the other hand, when he barks, you want to shoot him.
Barking is good. You know, when you talk about, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, when you talk about Democrats in the Senate that would try to obstruct any mechanism like this, have we not demonstrated that we need to secure our borders? I don't understand their obstruction.
It's become an emotional issue for them. So the president, we have the issue of DACA, the children who came here, the people who came here as children from other countries, and the president offered a better deal than Obama did. And in his State of the Union speech, he said, "You don't always get what you want. I'll give you a better deal, but in return, this is my ask. Let's secure the border so it doesn't occur again." And he says, "I am willing to compromise." Now, it isn't, that's not how the left wants to portray Trump, President Trump, that he wants to compromise. He said clearly, "I'll give you a better deal, but you help me secure the border." It actually sounds reasonable. But folks on the left have done everything they can to hide that fact and to somehow make it a point of principle that they're not compromising. That's wrong. The president has a job to do. He has to secure a border, but at the same time, he's taking care of a priority of the left. Let's make it happen.
If you don't mind backing up a few sentences, I want to ask you this as both a lawmaker and a physician. You mentioned fentanyl coming across the border. It used to be with the cartels, we worried about cocaine. We worried about large amounts of marijuana. We worried about heroin. Now, this fentanyl, I assume it's the synthetic stuff that's really, really dangerous. What's your read on that?
It is incredibly dangerous. You can make it in a lab. You don't need to grow poppies or plants that can be found out and destroyed. There's cooperation between Chinese chemical makers and Mexican gangs. They are bringing it across the border. It is deadly. It is much more potent than heroin, so people think they're taking heroin, but actually it's got some amount of fentanyl, and they're dying. We have to have a new approach how to deal with it. Again, if a Mexican cartel is buying it from China, if you take out their financing, going back to the beginning of the conversation, if you confiscate the money they use, then you eliminate their ability to finance the deal, then that's another way to limit the amount of fentanyl coming into our country.
Senator, a listener just asked a question, and she poses a rather thoughtful question. If we're successful in securing the border, does that not leave the Gulf Coast very, very vulnerable as the new drug ports of choice?
Totally. The cartels are always going to respond to something different. On the other hand, they're already bringing in large amounts of contraband through ports. It's just whether it's a land-based port like Laredo or McAllen or a port like New Orleans. And so they're always going to respond. On the other hand, do you just give it up and say, we're not going to fight back? There's a sheriff in Alexandria, William Hilton. He said, fighting drugs is like mowing the grass. You got to do it, you got to do it, and you got to do it, or else the grass overwhelms you. And I kind of get that.
Well, I think a lot of people are getting that, particularly when we hear, national news about how our opioid-related deaths are climbing, and it's not, back alley, drug takers to get high. It's people that started with prescriptions, and now they have a need, and unfortunately now it's getting filled with fentanyl, and they're dying in record numbers.
Totally true. And if you look, it's actually men between ages 35 and 55 who are typically white, non-college educated, who are dying the most. Among African Americans, cocaine actually continues to be a big issue, although fentanyl is creeping up in African Americans too. But the economy that's called death from despair. The economy has been so tough for non-college educated folks over the last 8-10 years that they've just become unemployed, not had options, and despair, and end up doing drugs. So we've got to do something better about that, and one, create opportunity. I will say that under President Trump, opportunity is returning, unemployment going way down, jobs, wage growth beginning to occur, all positive. But we also have to do something about the supply of drugs.
Well, and I think this is being fought at every level, from small-town police departments, all the way up to the federal government. How much money is it going to take, all told, to really make a dent in this, Senator? Have you looked at that?
Well, if part of it is death from despair, part of the money going out will be just, why don't we have wages growing? Why don't we have the economy growing? Instead of a manufacturing policy which encourages jobs to move to China or to Mexico or to India, why don't we have a manufacturing policy which encourages people to move their plants from those countries back here? So part of it is just creating opportunities so people don't feel like they have to turn to drugs to have meaning in their life. So it doesn't have to be the federal taxpayer. It can be a robust economy.
Now, the other half of that equation, as you said, the white male, 35 to 55, I believe, that started with prescriptions. How do we deal with that?
So we have to address that in a lot of ways. One, supply. So what we've been talking about is what do we do about supply? Get rid of the financing. They can't buy the drugs from China to bring across the border. Part of it is demand. For those folks who are currently in addiction, can we have treatment programs that actually work and keep them in long-term recovery? And then there's the middle part, which is both the financing but also the opportunity. If the people have no vision, they perish. We have to return to the vision that when you're in the United States of America, you have lots of opportunity before you if you're willing to work hard. And so we have to restore that vision.
Senator, we have about 90 seconds left, and I'm just curious, is there any other congressional biz you'd like us to know about right now?
Oh, lots of things. We just passed a bill yesterday for Veterans Choice Program for those veterans who don't live near a VA facility, that they would have the opportunity to go out and get the care closer to their home. So that passed yesterday. Fantastic news. We also are working on the National Defense Authorization Act. The United States has as many enemies as we ever have had, but they're getting better armed and more capable, so we have to respond to that. So we're working on so-called NDAA. It's been a very productive Congress, a measure not just by the strength of the economy, but also by some vital legislation we've passed, again, for example, for veterans.
Senator Bill Cassidy, as always, we enjoy having you on the program, and we appreciate your thoughts on this. It'll be very interesting to see how much support this garners in terms of this confiscation and reallocation of drug money. Thanks so much, and please keep us in the loop.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen.